Senator Hawley.
Mr. Chairman, I'll let Senator Cotton go next. He was here before me.
Senator Cotton.
Ms. Monaco, last week, the National School Board Association wrote to President Biden asking the administration to bring the full force and weight of the feds down onto parents who are protesting various school policies at school board meetings, including the indoctrination of children with an anti-American doctrine known as critical race theory, or protesting the requirement that children as young as 2 be required to wear masks. Now, I think we can all agree that violence is not an acceptable form of political protest, and violence can never be used to achieve policy or political goals. But that's not what the School Board Association letter focuses on. In fact, in one example of what the association thinks warrants federal criminal charges, they cite, and this is a direct quote, an individual who prompted a school board to call a recess because of opposition to critical race theory. A recess. The association is asking the administration to use the Patriot Act, a law that this Congress passed and has repeatedly reauthorized, primarily to stop the threat of Islamic jihadists, to bring criminal charges for domestic terrorism against parents who attend school boards to oppose things like critical race theory or mask mandates, resulting in a recess being called. Ms. Monaco, is it domestic extremism for a parent to advocate for their child's best interests?
Well, Senators, you rightly point out that violence is not the answer. There can be very spirited public debate, and there should be very spirited public debate on a whole host of issues. But when that tips over into violence or threats, there is a role for law enforcement.
But Ms. Monaco, I'm sorry, my time is limited here, and I asked a simple yes or no question, and I have several of them that I want to ask. So I'd like a yes or no answer. Is it domestic extremism for a parent to advocate for their child's best interests?
I think what you have described, no, I would not describe as domestic extremism.
Is it domestic extremism for a parent to want to have a say in what their child is taught at school?
I think it's important, although obviously not my field in the Justice Department, to opine on education policy. It's important for parents' voices to be heard. But Senator, I want to talk about what the Attorney General did do in response to that. The issue of threats.
Ms. Monaco, I want to go through my question. I grant you that no one should ever threaten violence or use violence to try to achieve political or policy goals. They shouldn't, for instance, follow Democratic senators into the bathroom violating state laws. No one should ever use threats of violence or violence to achieve political goals. I'm asking very simple questions here and trying to get to the bottom of what was on the Attorney General's mind or the department's mind. Is it domestic extremism for parents to oppose their children being taught to treat people differently because of race?
The Justice Department's job, Senator, is to apply facts to law, not to opine on letters that are put forward or I think it's very important for the Justice Department to.
Ms. Monaco, it's a fact that the School Board Association just sent this letter to President Biden, and then conveniently the Attorney General released his letter yesterday describing his series of measures to confront this grave and growing threat of parents protesting their kids being indoctrinated and the school board having to call a recess. Is there any connection between those two things?
I want to be very clear, in the memorandum that's publicly available, the Attorney General issued, talks about the importance of bringing federal, state, local law enforcement together to make sure that there is awareness of how to report threats that may occur, and to ensure that there's an open line of communication to address threats, to address violence, and to address law enforcement issues in that context, which is the job of the Justice Department, nothing more.
The United States just saw the largest single-year increase in murders on record. Has the Attorney General issued a memorandum describing a special series of measures that the Department of Justice should take to try to address this record increase in murders?
Yes, indeed, Senator. In fact, I issued a directive to the field
You did.
earlier this year.
As the Attorney General.
It was on behalf of the Attorney General and the rest of the leadership of the Justice Department to address the alarming rise in violent crime and to lay out a strategy for violent crime reduction, which includes going after and using federal resources to target the most violent offenders, including those operating with guns, including those responsible for murders and violence in our communities. So absolutely, we take the alarming rise in violent crime exceptionally seriously. And indeed, I've heard from from the many hours I have spent with law enforcement leaders across this country, how urgently they feel it is to address this rise in violent crime. And we are working every
Ms. Monaco,
day
my
to
time
address
is
that
almost up, and I
challenge.
just want to finish with one final question. Did anyone at the FBI express disagreement or any reticence at all about investigating disagreements between parents and school boards over curriculums and school policies?
I don't understand that to have been it absolutely was not the subject of the Attorney General's memorandum, but the answer to your question is no.
Nobody at the FBI expressed any reticence.
I'm sorry, Senator, if you're asking me what was the response to the Attorney General's memorandum, I've heard no reticence, no concern. The job of U.S. attorneys and FBI special agents in charge to be conveners in their community, to address violent issues in their community, is the core job of the Justice Department.
All right, then.
Thank you, Senator Cotter. Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Monaco, I want to come back to this extraordinary letter and memorandum that the Attorney General of the United States issued yesterday. Practically every day brings new reports about this administration weaponizing the federal bureaucracy to go after political opponents. Frankly, I don't think we've ever seen anything like it in American history. I mean, for those of us who missed the McCarthy era, I guess this president is intent on bringing it to us, but with new force and new power and new urgency, unlike anything we've ever seen. Are you aware of any time in American history when an attorney general has directed the FBI to begin to intervene in school board meetings, local school board meetings?
I'm not aware, and I'm not aware that is not going on. Let me be very,
Really,
very
this
clear.
isn't about local school board meetings? That's not the subject of the memorandum? I thought that was in the memorandum.
The memorandum is quite clear. It's one page, and it asks the U.S. attorney community and the FBI special agents in charge to convene state and local law enforcement partners to ensure that there's an open line of communication to address threats, to address violence, and that's the appropriate role of the Department of Justice to make sure that we are addressing criminal conduct and violence.
At local school board meetings, let me just ask you this. Is parents waiting sometimes for hours to speak at a local school board meeting to express concerns about critical race theory or the masking of their students, particularly young children? Is that in and of itself, is that harassment and intimidation? Is waiting to express one's view at a school board meeting harassment and intimidation?
As the Attorney General's memorandum made quite clear, spirited debate is welcome, is a hallmark of this country. It's something we all should engage in. And
No, I don't
be
think so,
free
Ms.
to
Monaco. With
engage
all
in.
due respect, it didn't make it quite clear. It doesn't define those terms, nor does it define harassment or intimidation. It talks about violence. I think we can agree that violence shouldn't be condoned or looked aside from in any way, swept under the rug at all. But harassment and intimidation, what did those terms mean in the context of a local school board meeting? I mean, this seems to, in the First Amendment context, we talk about the chill to speech. If this isn't a deliberate attempt to chill parents from showing up at school board meetings for their elected school boards, I don't know what is. I mean, I'm not aware of anything like this in American history. We're talking about the FBI. You're using the FBI to intervene in school board meetings. That's extraordinary.
Senator, I have to respectfully disagree. That is not what
Point me to an instance.
the Attorney General's memorandum made quite clear that violence is not appropriate. Spirited public debate on a whole range of issues is absolutely what this country is all about.
Then why is it
When
being
and if-
investigated by
when
the
and if-
FBI?
It is not. When and if any situation turns to violence, then that is the appropriate role of law enforcement to address it.
Oh, no, the memorandum covers more than violence. It talks about intimidation. It talks about harassment. So I'm asking you to draw some lines. We do this all the time in the First Amendment context. This is the sum and substance of First Amendment law. So I expect that you'll be available and willing to do it now. Tell me where the line is with parents expressing their concerns, waiting for hours in these school board meetings. We've all seen the videos. This happened in my state. Parents have waited for hours. Sometimes the school board meetings have been ended before they can speak because the school board doesn't want to hear it. And now parents are told that if they wait and they express their views, that they may be investigated for intimidation?
I don't know who's telling them that, Senator. The job of the Justice Department is to investigate crimes. when a situation turns to violence, when and if a situation turns to violence, it's the job of the Justice Department and local law enforcement to address that. The Attorney General's memorandum simply asked the U.S. Attorney community, the FBI, and their counterparts to ensure that state and local law enforcement has an open line of communication to report threats, whether they happen in the context of election officials being threatened, whether they happen in the context of members of Congress being threatened, which the FBI responds to on a regular basis, as is appropriate. The job of the Justice Department is to address criminal conduct.
You know, all I can say is this is truly extraordinary. I think you know it is. It's unprecedented. You can't point to a single instance where anything like this has happened before. And I think parents across this country are going to be stunned to learn, stunned, that if they show up at a local school board meeting, by the way, where they have the right to appear and be heard, where they have the right to say something about their children's education, where they have the right to vote, and you are attempting to intimidate them. You are attempting to silence them. You are attempting to interfere with their rights as parents and, yes, with their rights as voters. This is wrong. This is dangerous. And I cannot believe that an Attorney General of the United States is engaging in this kind of conduct. And frankly, I can't believe that you are sitting here today defending it. I intend to get answers to these questions. You won't answer my questions. I'm going to get answers to these questions. Mr. Chairman, we need to have a hearing on this subject. We need to hear from the Attorney General himself. He needs to come here, take the oath, sit there, and answer questions. We have never seen anything like this before in our country's history. And frankly, I want to say I think it is a dangerous, dangerous precedent.
Been a recurring theme from some members about the memorandum that was issued yesterday by the Attorney General. I now have a copy of it in hand, as well as the press release from the Department of Justice, which without objection, I'm going to enter into the record so everyone can read the actual words printed. And it is worth noting that the opening of the memo is, quote, "In recent months, there has been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school administrators, board members, teachers, staff who participate in the vital work of running our nation's public schools." And he goes on to, with more specifics, how the Attorney General is seeking to coordinate with local and state law enforcement for the protection of all school personnel. That is clearly the intent of this. Those who believe that somehow or another violence or something close to it is a valid use of constitutional right, I couldn't disagree more. There are many who describe the January 6th occurrence here in the Capitol as just a visit by ordinary tourists. For those of us who lived through it, know better. And anyone who wants to characterize that as an ordinary constitutional process wasn't here and isn't being honest, whether they've said that publicly or were outside cheering the group on. So I want to make a record of that, and I'm going to add the press release as well from the Department of Justice, which goes into more detail on the subject.
Thanks for watching, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to our channel. And while you're at it, please leave us a comment. Thank you for watching.